Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, news director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Since President Biden will be making this trip, does this mean he supports the 40% pay increase, the 32-hour work week?
I'm not going to get into the details of what's being negotiated right now on the table with certainly with the parties.
I want to press you a little bit on what you just said. You said that the president supports the auto workers. Does that mean that the president is siding with the auto workers over the auto companies?
What we're saying is we're not going to get into the negotiation, right? This is, when it comes to the negotiation, that is something for the parties to decide on.
Yeah, but the president is going, so is he supporting the idea that, hey, we want a 40% pay increase, and we want it for only 32 hours a week? Let's try again.
You just said the president doesn't want to get into the specifics of the negotiations, but is he perhaps interfering in these negotiations by, visiting the picket line tomorrow?
We're not going to get into. We never get into, into the specifics of negotiations, not in public.
Should we try again, Steph?
Didn't she already say that? Was that edited?
No, let's try it again.
It seems like by going to stand with workers at a picket line, the president is literally standing with them in the terms that they're seeking in the contract dispute. But when you're asked about some of the specifics of that, you seem to be saying you guys don't want to get into the specifics of the dispute. So is he not standing with them on the terms with which they're trying to negotiate?
I mean, to be very clear, he is standing with them to make sure that they get a fair share.
John, I have more. Should we try one more time?
To be very clear. She did say, to be very clear. Didn't you say you had a boss who said, to be very honest?
Yeah. Bill Dybel, WNJY, Delphi, Monticello, Indiana. He'd come up and he'd look over his glasses and he'd say, Branden, I'm going to be very honest with you. And guess what would happen next, Steph?
No honesty.
He would lie. All right, let's try again.
Some past presidents have been an arbiter between two sides that are in conflict. It seems like by going to the picket line, he's not an arbiter between the two sides. He's choosing a side by standing with the union.
We have said over and over again that this is a president that stands with union.
You said over and over again, it's not about the tenets of what it is that the auto workers want. It's that he supports them. Hannah, do we have time? Can we try one more time?
One more time.
One more time.
If he's siding with the workers over the companies, he is indeed siding with the workers.
He is standing with the auto workers. He is standing with the workers. We are not involved in negotiations.
But we're going to be there, and he supports the idea that they want only a 32-hour work week with increased pay.
That is an interesting, basically, to me, with him going to the picket line, that indicates that he supports the striking workers. That's the way it was. Now, she's saying that we're not involved in the negotiations. The background on that is when they got involved a little bit in the railroad stuff, the railroad strike, there was criticism from both sides, from Josh Hawley, Corey Bush, from both sides. But it is interesting. It was former President Trump that kind of, in a way, pushed him to go. Now, we'll see what kind of reaction he gets. Is he going to go to Wentzville? I've not heard what picket line he's going to right now.
I think in Michigan.
Michigan, okay. Well, he and that's more of a battleground state. But it is. It is interesting that he would be doing it. But of course, we'll see what happens.
See, and Brian says he thinks maybe he does stand with the tenets of what the workers are asking for. And what I heard there is it's all for the gram. All I'm going to do is stand. I stand next to them so I can get a photo for my campaign ads. But I'm not going to get into the specifics and commit myself. But I am going to get a really nice photo that I can use going forward.
And the pattern of behavior very consistent with the White House. She was asked so in total there were 6 times in the open. She's asked twice. Okay, does Biden? It sounds like he's supporting them. She was asked 6 times. 6 times. She did not answer the question, as is common for the White House.
Well, and Biden has stood with technically the union folks during his campaign. Apparently, when there was a previous strike in Las Vegas, he attended that in 2020 and has always been kind of the union guy. But Eric Loomis, a professor from University of Rhode Island, he's an expert on U.S. labor history, said it's completely unprecedented. No president has ever walked a picket line before. So really, really a bizarre situation. And he said, yeah, there's the economy, there's so many other things going on. The president always kind of acts as a mediator, which I also find really interesting because from Biden, we got so much unity, togetherness, or whatever. And here we have this professor who's an expert in history saying the president always kind of serves as the unifier, as the mediator, as the person bringing people together. And here's our president, doing something unprecedented to try to, draw the line even between these two groups.
But he was kind of pushed that way because former President Trump shocked everybody when he said he was going to go to the picket line. And, the thing we all have to keep in mind is it's hard for the national media to understand this. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. There are a lot of union people that vote Republican. That is something people forget. Not the union bosses. The union rank and file. Ronald Reagan's coattails went all the way to North St. Louis County when I lived there growing up. Most heavily, you want to talk about labor, they had more labor up there than any other part of the state. I would argue in the Midwest, Ronald Reagan carried North County, and that's after what he did to the PATCO union with the air traffic controllers, and that wasn't very popular with some. But it is interesting. I'd like to see the percentage right now of how union members vote. I've not seen any percentage, but I do know in the past they've supported Reagan. I don't think they were very big supporters of either of the Bushes, but certainly Reagan and the Teamsters definitely supported Richard Nixon.
So Trump is going. As a matter of fact, big debate news. We're going to cover this coming up at 7:10. Couple of debates, and the one that has me really excited is not the one happening tomorrow night. There's another big debate coming. We're going to cover that at 7:10. State Treasurer Vivek Malek is going to be joining us. There's an unclaimed property auction. I don't know if you've seen some of the items in these unclaimed property auctions. My goodness, some crazy stuff. He's going to be joining us 8:10 this morning to talk about that.
My favorite from last year was the Pez dispensers.
So what happens after several years, they keep unclaimed property, and after so long, they're like, okay, nobody's claiming the Pez dispenser. Let's go to Cape Girardeau and see if somebody wants to bid a couple of bucks on it.
And it was like the American Choppers, that TV show? It was like their Pez dispensers particularly.
Was it the former state treasurer who told us on the show that they find a lot of inappropriate photos they have to destroy?
I think Brandon asked, have you ever found anything that you can't include in the auction? And his advice was, if you're going to take those types of photos, maybe don't put them in your safe deposit box, or pay for your safe deposit box, and then they will stay safe.
And I also remember him saying that Brandon asked a really good question about famous people that he's had, unclaimed property. Norm Stewart and Gary Pinkel had some, so hopefully they've been able to pick up their unclaimed property.
Probably not any of this kind of unclaimed.
No, of course not.
You would hope not. Go and claim it. Oh, wait, never mind. That's not really mine. That's not my unclaimed property. 874-9390, 874-9390. Story from our news partners, ABC 17. CVS employees protesting brutal work environment, staging walkouts. Apparently one of the CVS pharmacies in Columbia, people walking out there. Nurses in St. Louis with SMM Healthcare, they walked out for 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, with all the big news, and here's the thing with Joe going and doing this, going to the picket line. I'm taking money out of my wallet. I'm buying some gas at the gas pump for Air Force One. I'm going to pay for the president to go and do something that I vehemently disagree with, and something that any president of the United States, in my opinion, should not be involved with. But I'm going to take some money out and say, here you go. Here's some of my money to go pay and do something that I find incredibly distasteful. But I wonder now, with all the coverage about the United Auto Workers strike, and it's spreading, and now some places they're joining the strike, other places they're having to lay off people already. But I'm wondering, does this empower other folks? Oh, look, they're striking. Look what's happening. And you've got nurses striking. And their thing is, and listen, there's a lot of legitimate things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you say, listen, we got to do something because we're not getting your attention. And for the nurses, one of the big issues is staffing. As a matter of fact, CVS, it's also staffing. But I would challenge anybody in any job who's not short-staffed.
It is rare, yeah. It's a tough issue, and I'm aware of the CVS, and certainly have heard about the nurses and everything else. But we talk about President Biden. Let's also not forget Senator Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley on the right, Senator Bernie Sanders on the left. have basically said the same thing, and it's kind of a populism, but Senator Hawley has blasted the automakers in his own Twitter page. He said he supports I took it, he supports the striking auto
There are
workers.
pictures of him on his Twitter with the Wentzville folks yesterday, and he said it's a privilege to visit the picket line in Wentzville today. These workers deserve better pay, better benefits, and a guarantee their jobs will stay in America. And it's full of pictures of him there.
Correct.
So 24 hours after Cori Bush and AOC were on the picket line, our senior U.S. Senator Josh Hawley is there. Does that make your mind? Does that, if you're listening right now, and again, go back to Brian's point that he has made very clear for a while now, we make this assumption, stereotyping does not always work, but a lot of people assume, well, if you're a union, you vote Democrat, you vote progressive. Josh Hawley being on the picket line in St. Louis yesterday, does that make your head spin a little bit?
It does not. The other thing is there's a lot of pro-labor Republicans, and they don't necessarily support the strike necessarily. I mean, that's up to each individual. But if you look at the right to work vote in this state in I believe it was 2018, all the deepest red counties voted against right to work. All of them, including the county where Holly Rader's from, the bill sponsor, Scott County, one of the most Republican counties in the state. They voted against right to work. They, by the way, have quite a few unions in that area.
CVS, ABC 17 posted a copy of a letter posted to the doors of CVS. I think it was a pharmacy, and it says, due to lack of staff and support from corporate, overlapping pharmacies, extra technician help, etc., we are unable to give vaccinations today. We will, however, stay open to care for our patients. Please contact 1-800-SHOP-CVS to help advocate for us. Our working conditions are
not just CVS either. Try some of the mid-Missouri pharmacies and see what your wait's like just to get your prescription.
Yeah, our working conditions are unsafe, and we want to be focused on getting your prescriptions done timely and accurately. And I wonder what happens with an employee, because somebody knows from CBS, somebody posted this letter on the door, and I don't always know if that's the most effective way to get things done. But I'm not in that situation. I would just think calling out your current employer to get something you want, it just does. Like, oh my gosh, you don't do that.
Well, and then I kind of live in the regulated space, and pharmacies are highly regulated. For example, like by the Board of Pharmacy in Missouri, and you're thinking like these people are basically saying the conditions here are unsafe. We're not able to do the job. I wonder like what the regulators are thinking. Like, do we have a regulatory problem here?
Coming up 5 minutes from now, we're going to be doing your daily DC rundown.
Did you hear what Menendez said yesterday? why he was walking around with a jacket clanging full of gold bars and cash?
Man, we have some of what he
fallacious as possible. Remember, prosecutors get it wrong sometimes.
Democrat, New Jersey Senator, U.S. Senator from New Jersey, Bob Menendez. When he says prosecutors get it wrong sometimes, John, I'm going to assume he's talking about Fulton County Prosecutor Fannie Willis. He's right. Prosecutors do get it wrong sometimes. That's what's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
He did make a statement yesterday telling us how he got that almost $500,000 in cash. He had $480,000 in cash stuffed into envelopes and into clothing. He had gold bars, and he said, I'm just old school. You know, we have those people in our lives, right, who like to deal in cash, who, you know, are a little bit hesitant. And, you know, I know people like this. None of those people have $480,000 in cash. And I mean, I've seen people with what I thought was quite a bit of cash, but it's not $500,000.
Old Aunt Ethel, Denton County. Money all over the house, including in her bra. And she was 98 years old. Because that's old school. That's a Great Depression era kind of thing for a lot of folks.
And he is and we heard a little bit, I think he was citing the race card a little bit yesterday. And he's kind of going back there. He said, I've withdrawn thousands of dollars in cash from my personal savings account, which I have kept for emergencies and because of the history of my family facing confiscation in Cuba. And so that's his whole reason, is just like, you know, every once in a while I just go pull out, you know, $50K in cash. How much do you think is the most I mean, okay, you're looking in your wallet. How much cash do you have on right now?
I have $1, which you can see on our YouTube channel, Wake Up. I have $1 in my wallet. That's what I got.
I think I have $30, but I literally left the state last week with zero. I mean, I'm terrible about that. And I'm trying to think the most I've ever pulled out in cash out of an account. It's got to be like less than $1,000.
$2,500 for car repairs one time.
Yeah, to work with small businesses. I think I know folks, and I think especially in like, you know, some of my older friends and in rural areas, like people still do like to deal in cash. But this explanation is just beyond belief. And I'm thinking also they've got to have these bank records, right? So like they're going to be able to go back and check, you know, is this guy randomly and like, can you imagine walking into the local bank here and being like, I just need $50K. You've got to sign some paperwork for that, right? I know when you're depositing, you know, a whole bunch of money, there's extra paperwork, but I know people who like worked in concession stands and stuff, and when you're depositing that much cash, they get like, where'd you get all this cash from?
Well, I know at times back in the day, Hannah, when I'd go and make withdrawals from the ATM machine for obnoxious amounts of cash, it was usually like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah.
And I'd go,
shame on you.
Huh. Maybe gotta rethink things. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting a large sum of cash from an ATM in downtown. Maybe not a good move.
I notoriously never have cash on me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fiance is pretty much in charge of paying our admission anytime we go to one of his little brother's football games because it's a given. I never have cash.
I definitely, as an adult, as an almost 40-year-old, have had to have my parents pay my way into a little kid's football game for not bringing enough money.
It's a good strategy.
I know.
Saying.
All right. Well,
pays off in the long run, doesn't it?
It really does. And they did it very happily. Trump is back in court. He is making some motions, but this time not in the criminal cases. He's involved in these civil cases. Obviously, Democrats are on this ploy to keep him off the ballot and to, tarnish his record. He is, but he is in Colorado this time. He is claiming the First Amendment. So he's got some liberal groups suing him. He is also saying, that the 14th Amendment applies to one who engaged in insurrection or rebellion, not somebody who just instigated it. So he made a motion under Colorado's anti-SLAPP law, and that's the law that shields people from lawsuits that harass them for behavior protected
Arps joining us on the show this morning. I want to get to it real quick here before we do our formal introductions and everything. Stephanie was just doing a story about Josh Hawley, our senior U.S. Republican senator, on the picket line yesterday, Wentzville, during the United Auto Workers strike. What is your take on what Hawley is doing? Because we stereotype, and I think Brian Hausworth has been very good in reminding folks, we assume that, if you're union, it means you're progressive Democrat. Not always the case. What's your take on what Hawley's been doing in Wentzville?
Well, I got to tell you, it doesn't surprise me. This has been, Josh Hawley has been doing a series of populist things. Last week, or a couple weeks ago, he announced legislation to cap interest rates on credit cards to 18%. He's also wanted to cap the price of insulin. So Josh Hawley showing up at a picket line, supporting the union workers, doesn't surprise me. Also, I think he's smart in doing this because, as we've seen the last few election cycles, Republicans, specifically Donald Trump, have done very well with non-educated union workers. So I think it's a smart move by Hawley.
All right, Chris Arps joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you would see Stephanie Bell getting ready for the show, Hannah.
Just doing a little makeup.
There's producer Hannah.
Good morning.
John Marsh is here.
Yes, sir.
My name is Branden Rathert, Chris Arps. And let's talk about this, too. So, two big debates, and the one I'm really excited about is not even the debate tomorrow. We're going to cover that at 7:10 here on the show. I'm really excited about this other debate. But tomorrow, thinner stage, a thinner lineup of candidates on the stage tomorrow night is somebody who is paying attention. What is it that you would want to see tomorrow in the debate?
Well, I would like to see some of the candidates who had a lot of hype involved with them kind of show up and show us what they're all about. Tim Scott, he was very hot there for a minute, but his debate performance last time really wasn't up to par. It was kind of low-key. I'd like to see him a little more aggressive. I'd like to see Ron DeSantis be a little more aggressive and maybe make his move on Donald Trump. He's 30 points behind in the polls in New Hampshire and Iowa. He's actually slipping in the polls. I wish President Trump would have been there. I would have loved to have seen him on the debate stage. And I'm looking forward to seeing Chris Christie. As we know, Chris Christie is only in the race to try to take out Donald Trump. So I'm looking forward to Chris Christie for strictly entertainment value.
He's the popcorn candidate, as I like to call him. And
exactly.
And it's interesting. So we covered in the opening, Corinne Jean-Pierre asked, and we featured every time she was asked yesterday about Joe Biden going to the picket line, asking, does that mean Joe Biden supports these demands of these United Auto Workers, 32-hour work week, but a huge increase in pay? I thought a brilliant move on Trump's part when he announced last week that he was going to go in and talk to these striking workers. What do you think about that move by Trump, saying instead of doing the debate, not that he was going to do it anyway, but I'm going to go do this? What did you think about that move?
I think it's a smart move. As we said earlier with Hawley, since the last couple of cycles, Republicans have had a greater share of the union vote. That is because of President Trump. President Trump makes a good point to the union workers that it's Joe Biden and the Democrats that are putting your jobs in jeopardy by advocating for this green energy policy, which means over time less UAW workers. So it's smart for Trump, and it puts the emphasis on him tomorrow instead of on the debates.
And then the other thing that I wanted to ask you about as it relates to Trump poll numbers, how did you cover the ABC Washington Post poll that showed Trump beating Biden? And here's why, and I know everybody's, and we preface every time we talk about polling, for what it's worth, snapshot that moment in time with maybe a couple of thousand folks that were polled, relying on the idea that maybe they answered those honestly. But one of the things that I really read into this is, as Stephanie and I have covered this over the past several weeks, they've been consistently showing Trump gaining. So I'm not one of those. And again, I might accept it because it's favorable to what I want to happen. And that is, I would want for anybody other than Biden to be president. But do you think there's something to this polling that came out earlier this week?
Well, all the recent polls have showed a very tight race between Biden and Trump. Trump is ahead by 1 or 2 points. Biden might be ahead 1 or 2 points. Usually when you have a poll like this that is not With the other polls, people say that it is an outlier. This could be an outlier poll. It showed President Trump with a 9-point lead. What I find curious is, the last couple of weeks, President Trump has not been in the news as much with all of his trials. And I find it curious that when he's not in the news as much, it seems like his polling has gone up, at least in this Washington Post AP poll, with a 9-point lead. So is there a correspondence there? I don't know.
All right, Chris Arps, chrisarps.com is joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
The other thing I found interesting in the polling was it showed a significant bump for young folks under 35 were supporting Trump. What do you know, and that kind of matches with just anecdotally what I've seen in my own life among like older nieces and nephews. What do you think about that? You think there are more young people flocking to the Republican side?
I mean, there could be. I mean, young people, 35-year-old and younger, a lot of them started their careers during the Trump administration. And during the Trump administration, we had record growth. The economy was doing very, very well. President Biden becomes president, and we're on the brink of a recession. The economy's not doing so well. So maybe they're seeing that correlation that with Trump, Republicans, the economy does much better under Republicans than with Democrats.
I want to ask you something. We were talking yesterday about the 30% of Americans who do think that Bidenomics is working. I want to ask you this, Chris. Do you know a 30%er? Do you know somebody that says, man, the economy is good? Do you know somebody like that?
I do not personally, but I would assume they are a big-time Democratic Party Kool-Aid drinker, or they either have hedge fund money like you, Brandon. Those are the only people that I think that would say this Biden economy is doing good for them.
Yeah, we talk about the rich elites, and maybe it's people like that go, yeah, the economy, hey, it's working out for me. I mean, it's been working for Bob Menendez of New Jersey, who's also a parent. Man, we had the. Did you see his presser yesterday? He said, "I'm not. It's a witch hunt. It's all that. It's because I'm Hispanic. That's why they're going after me." But it's interesting. We highlighted on the show yesterday the link between Bob Menendez and what he was doing with one of Hunter Biden's business associates. And I start to wonder. You step back, take a macro picture of the whole thing with these Democrats in D.C. What kind of picture do you start to paint, Chris?
Well, with Menendez, I'm like, dude, you just got away with corruption about 6 years ago. You need to sit down somewhere and do your Senate job. On Monday on our show in St. Louis, we have every Monday Senator Jim Talent on as a guest. And first question I asked him as a former member of that esteemed body, is that what U.S. senators usually do, is keep money stuffed into their suit jackets and with gold bars? And he assured me that that's not a usual practice for United States senators. So Menendez, he played the race card. He said it's been a custom of his to keep large sums of cash in his home because he's from Cuba and because property over there that was confiscated 60 years ago may be taken. So that is the reason why he keeps large sums of money. Doesn't sound very believable to me, Brandon. What about you?
It's bizarre. We were trying to come up with, I mean, how much money is the most cash you've ever withdrawn out of your own bank account? I think we're at like under $5,000 every year. I mean,
yeah, definitely that.
Yeah,
not $100,000. And then, like I said, he was under indictment back in 2015 for some shady things, and he got away with it. And to do it again is just amazing to me. Now, a theory that I gave yesterday is that this indictment of Bob Menendez is very suspicious to me because the Justice Department is beginning a lot of criticism from Republicans that the justice system is not fair and they only go after Republicans. Did they indict Menendez to say, look, we go after Democrats and Republicans, the Justice Department is fair? I think so.
I like that conspiracy theory from you, Chris. And actually, I think it's probably not a conspiracy theory. What do you think? I mean, you talked about his former indictment, but with that, a lot of folks stood by him in the last investigation and the last indictment. And I'm thinking about, for example, Cory Booker has been awfully mum, and I suspect we will hear something from him today. If you're sitting in Cory Booker's shoes and you stood by him last time, but I mean, these facts are pretty tough to get around if they are actually proven to be true. What do you do if you're Cory Booker? You stand by him, or you think everyone sheds him? And in that way, if everyone, decides we're not going to stand by him, does that put the pressure on him, to either take a deal or resign?
Yeah. Look, I understand Cory Bush. Look, this is your fellow senator. You want to try to stay with him, give him support. If I was Cory Bush, I'd be doing with a lot what the other Democrat and Republicans in New Jersey are doing, and they're abandoning Robert Menendez big time. When he was indicted in 2015, he had 3 years left on his term. So I think that was a big part of the reason that they stood by him. The second time around, they're like, look, you got away with it. You're being indicted again. And then if you look at it, he's up for re-election next year. So I think that's why there's a big call on him to resign. That seat is, if he resigns, it's going to go to a Democrat. It's a Democratic governor, of course. They'll anoint him. But I think they don't want to take the chance with a year out with Bob Menendez having this cloud over him that seat could potentially go to a Republican. So I think that's why they want him to leave now so a Democratic governor can appoint him and keep that seat in Democrat hands.
Christopher Arps, chrisarps.com, hanging out with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Chris, we've been watching the polls in the presidential race with Joe Biden and Donald Trump in a statistical dead heat. Now the Washington Post poll comes out showing Trump way out in front. Do you buy it?
Like I said earlier, I think it's an outlier poll. I'd like to see more polls showing the former president with a bigger lead. But the people at the Biden administration or the Biden campaign, they've got to be worried about this poll showing such a wide lead. And it's a WashU ABC poll, so it's credible. It's not some poll that no one has ever heard of. But I think if we see more polls like this, I think you'll see panic in the Biden camp.
All right, coming up just a few minutes from now, Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com. Check out his website, some great articles, things that I think, just because you're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri, I would think you're going to enjoy a lot of the things that Chris posts onto his website. A Missouri judge yesterday rejecting the Secretary of State's problematic, quote, summary of abortion initiative petitions. Chris's take on that coming up 5 minutes from now here.
of the month, but the three major indices finishing with gains. The Dow ends the session up 43 points, NASDAQ gaining 60, while the S&P finishes up 17.
Coming about 8:25, Stephanie Bell is going to be keeping an eye on the stock market. We'll look at what futures are. We'll do that in the morning Bell Business News with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you. Chris Arps, chrisarps.com, hanging out with us right now. Yesterday, Circuit Judge John Beadham, is from the Missouri Independent. Circuit Judge John Beadham wrote that the summaries crafted by Jay Ashcroft, Secretary of State, crafted by his office, completely ignored the initiative proposal's protections. This has to do with the abortion initiative petitions, and it has to do with the language as it relates to contraceptives and other reproductive health needs. And I think since day one, since this was written, obviously there were folks that were kind of looking at this. Jay Ashcroft held strong to his point. Judge disagreed yesterday. Your take, Chris?
Well, I think it just shows again that the abortion industry has strong allies within the legislature and within the judiciary. So I applaud Senator Ashcroft, Secretary Ashcroft on his efforts, but we really can't be surprised by these liberal courts here in Missouri and around the country.
Chris Arps, chrisarps.com, hanging out with us this morning here on the show.
I think I disagree that the court in Cole County is a liberal court.
So I got to tell you, Chris, and I know you're probably watching on our YouTube channel, Wake Up Mid-Missouri. You can also watch on Facebook. I got to tell you, bud, because I love you. Stephanie and I are both kind of looking at each other like, oh, we disagree with that.
I do think, I was looking at the opinion, and we can walk through it a little bit later about exactly what the court came down and said. And I was happy to see, one of the things they took issue with, I know, was, the summary statement only talks about abortion, and this actually covers contraception and abortion, so it needs to mention both. And one of the court's the reasoning was, hey, there might be other measures that just deal with abortion, and so if this is the one that covers abortion and contraceptives, then it would be helpful to people voting to know which one covers what. And I think I tend to agree with that. I did see that in the way that the court rewrote it in every version. There is a bullet. The second bullet will say, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution? There's a first bullet, but the second bullet is remove Missouri's ban on abortion. I don't think that survives a vote. I think if people read, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to remove Missouri's ban on abortion? People are going to be like, no. You might be nuanced, but remove the ban. I don't think they have the votes to get that passed.
I think you're right, and we saw what happened in Kentucky and Kansas and these other states that are, red-leaning states, but the people voiced their opinion that they do want to keep abortion legal.
Chris Arps joining us. By the way, I saw pictures of you. Were you just out in the desert shooting guns?
No, I was not on the desert shooting guns, but went out there to see my childhood friend moved out to Phoenix about 4 years ago. We're both huge Dallas Cowboys fans, so I was expecting to have a great weekend of seeing my friend of 49 years along with a Dallas Cowboy victory. It did not happen. But I tell you what, there was a sea of blue at State Farm Stadium yesterday. The Phoenix Cardinals should really be embarrassed. Because I had a state trooper come up to us while we were walking, and he said, "Is this a Dallas Cowboys home game?" No joke.
Well, I'm glad you got to do that. I know you've been a lifelong childhood fan of the Dallas Cowboys. Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com. We appreciate you, man, and we will be looking forward to our next visit here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Thanks, guys. Have a great show.
All right. We'll see you coming up a few minutes from now. Why Fox News cut away from a Donald Trump speech and the debate that has me more excited than the debate that's happening tomorrow night, which we are carrying live here on the radio stations. Good morning.
American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, news director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
We're going up, and we're the only ones going up. They're going down. They're going down, down, down. They ought to stop wasting their time. You know, they're wasting a lot of time with these ridiculous debates that nobody's watching. Their last debate was the lowest rated debate in history. Now, what was I doing, Marjorie? I was someplace else, wasn't I, huh? I was doing another interview. We had 271 million people listening to the Tucker Carlson interview. That's an all-time record.
So here we are, back in the thick of campaign season. We are now.
That was Trump on Fox yesterday, and that's the cutaway, John. So here's Trump talking about the ratings for the debate.
I was doing another interview. We had 271 million people listening to the Tucker Carlson interview. That's an all-time record.
Fox gets uncomfortable.
So here we are, back in the...
Kind of made me laugh.
I think you've taken issue with guests on our show where they mention other radio shows. I think it's the sheriff usually, right?
Boone County Sheriff Dwayne Carey.
I was just telling someone about this yesterday.
Boone County Sheriff Dwayne Carey. By the way, people say, well, how do you know, Branden, if you've never voted for a Democrat? I voted for Dwayne Carey several times. He was a tough as nails, very effective sheriff in Boone County, and I have voted for him several times. And because he is so good at his job, people forget that he's a Democrat, and I hate to say it that way.
And he is very popular, not just in Boone County, but he's very popular with his fellow sheriffs from across the state. And there are a lot of Democratic sheriffs across the state, Republicans. That group tends to be pretty bipartisan. It's
about the law.
It's about the law and in supporting those deputies that are doing some very tough jobs. And also, as I learned yesterday at that transportation conference, the work they're doing on these roads with these wrecks, that's almost as dangerous as some of these criminal situations, if you will. So, but yes, he is very popular, and he's been, somebody who's been around forever.
Is it like this, Hannah? Like every time he comes in, whenever Sheriff Dwayne Carey comes in, it's kind of like it's such habit. It's like we're just waiting because we know that he's going to mention, well, when I was on this show or when I was on that show, and it's like then whenever he does finally mention another radio station, which is like that's a sin. Or,
well,
thank you.
Thanks.
To be honest, I think he's trolling us because sometimes we even say before an interview, like, hey, man, please don't.
Please don't. But then when he does, we're like, oh, there it is.
Yep.
We
ding, ding, ding.
Certainly expected that. So I thought kind of a lighthearted moment on Fox yesterday here. Trump's bragging about the guy that was Tucker Carlson, about his ratings on the Tucker Carlson interview on Fox, the very network that his separation of employment happened. He was fired from Fox. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So tomorrow night, big debate. Couple of cool things we're doing on the show tomorrow. Raven Harrison, who joins us every week. She is so sharp. I love Raven Harrison, and folks around Mid-Missouri loving her too. Trey Fauché, president of Mizzou College Republicans, from a younger person's point of view. He's going to be hanging out in the studio 7:35 for about 5 to 10 minutes, talk about the debate and what they might expect. And I know there was a lot of talk about Ramaswamy following the last debate and what it did for him. And I'm wondering, do you look for a repeat of that, or do you think, I want to see something different now? It's going to be a thinner lineup, if you will. And Doug Burgum, the mayor of North Dakota, who just made it into the debate, it's getting so bad for his campaign now. I'm getting texts from his wife. And I want
that was a different sign-up list that you enrolled for.
Hey, you made $19 off the deal.
Well, and that's what I want to say. And her name, and by the way, Doug Burgum's wife's name, Catherine. But I want to say, listen, I got what I wanted here. I'm done. I gave you all $1. I got $20 back. That's a pretty good investment considering the guy is not even president yet. Catherine sent me a text. Hey, Doug is relying on your help ahead of the debate. Take the debate prep survey here. Asa Hutchinson's not going to be on stage. So
he's not.
Smaller lineup. Here's the debate that I'm really excited about. This going to be on Fox. GOP presidential candidate and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and California Governor Gavin Newsom are going to debate. The moderator is going to be Sean Hannity. I can't wait to see this because you look at the two states and the two styles, obviously, smooth, handsome, slick-talking progressive in Gavin Newsom, and then Ron DeSantis, very principled man. He's a veteran, and you look at, for example, if you go back to the government pandemic that started in 2020 and how the states handled it differently and the negative effects that have happened in California and kind of how Florida just continued smooth sailing. Like, I would be more inclined to watch this than the presidential debate tomorrow. John, is this something that would fascinate you?
Yeah, okay.
No?
The debates after a while tend to pile on a little bit.
Well, and that's what fascinates me about this one, because it's not candidate against candidate. It's more ideology versus ideology. That's what fascinates me about
Florida
this.
v. California. No, I'm excited because so many people have been saying Newsom's the candidate, and I really have not paid much attention to that guy, honestly. So I want to see how he kind of stacks up. I also kind of want to see how Ron DeSantis goes head-to-head with somebody. I don't think he had the best performance when he was on stage with everybody else in the last debate, and so I'm hoping that, were we to pick him in the general or in the primary, which is looking less and less likely, that he would stack up well when it's just one-on-one.
And I would say this, that actually, and I agree with you, Stephanie, I am intrigued by this debate you're talking about between the two governors, DeSantis and Newsom. I am surprised. I really enjoy listening to Sean Hannity's show, but if I'm Fox, the moderator would be Brett Baer, Martha McCallum, or I'm a little surprised it's one of the hosts. I think on something like that, the moderator should be a news person. That's just me. Hannity does a great job, but Hannity on a lot of those interviews, we know how he feels. I'm just surprised he's the moderator on that.
Hannity's here weekdays 2:00 on the radio station 2 to 4, and then again you can catch a third hour of Hannity starting at 6. So here's the thing, and Gavin Newsom saying he's kind of, to your point about, you got Sean Hannity and you got Mr. Ron DeSantis. It's going to be 2 against 1. Remember, Hannity and Gavin Newsom, they're kind of buddy-buddy. They knew each other even prior. Right. Hannity did kind of an extended interview with him, I think, last month. And so they're kind of, they can hang out and stuff just because they have wide varying opinions on social issues and political issues. I think that would be an interesting debate. That would be something that I would be looking forward to seeing.
And the former president is not going to be participating tomorrow night. He's not. I think if he were there, it would boost their ratings. People would tune in whether they like him or not. But he's not going to be there, so it'll be interesting to see. Ramaswamy did very well, but you just haven't heard. I haven't heard much about him since then. It's been mainly in the media about the former president, in his, where he's been traveling, et cetera, and then some of his legal issues.
David says, "I don't want to watch it because I'm afraid I might like Newsom, not his policies, but his persona." And again, he is. He's handsome. He's slick talking, and he's full of
slick.
He's slick. That's right. He's oily. He's greasy. He's like a greased pig at the State Fair in Sedalia in August. That's my take on Gavin Newsom, governor of California. Debate coming up, and that's going to be November 30th, so we're still a ways out. It's going to be a Thursday night, about an hour and a half, Thursday night, 8 o'clock. And we are carrying the debate tomorrow night. Are we doing a tailgate for the debate tomorrow night, Hannah? Pre-game coverage?
We are not. Our coverage will start right at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. For our 93.9 The Eagle listeners, we will be preempting the Cardinals game. So just a quick programming note there for you.
So that's tomorrow night. You can catch those here on the radio station.
Kind of a neat venue, being the Reagan Library is kind of a neat place to have it, I thought.
I agree. I've been there, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Of course you have been there, Brian.
Yeah. No, it was
much smaller, awesome. Right?
It was much smaller, but it literally is it's like a big hill in the sun. It was very serene.
Did you see his old Jeep?
I didn't see that. But they had a cafe. I remember that. They had a gift shop, and I'll tell you what I do remember, too, more. The biggest thing I remember is watching a video, and he and Jim Baker believed that Jimmy Carter, they had a lot more respect for the two of each other than the media reported. He sent President Carter to go greet the hostages after they were released. I think that was one of the first things. I believe he sent him on Air Force One, as I recall. I don't ever remember hearing that in the press, but it was in the library on a video. There were just videos like you wouldn't believe. And they also showed some videos of after he got shot and how serious that was, and it sounded like it was much more serious than even the media knew.
That Jeep you're talking about, John, I remember I was about the age of Alex P. Keaton from the TV show Family Ties, which was kind of monumental at the time because you had a young conservative, that in the character played by Michael J. Fox. But I remember watching the Reagan-Barbara Walters interview, and Reagan driving Barbara Walters around the ranch in that Jeep at the Reagan Library.
And I don't know where, I never saw the Jeep. But the courtyard on TV when they show that, it looks, and I remember Nancy Reagan going out there when right after she left office, all the first ladies, Lady Bird was still alive. That's how long ago it was. That courtyard looks a lot bigger on TV than it really is. It's not that big.
874-9390. Story we got into a little bit earlier with Christopher Arps here on the show. Missouri judges from the Missouri Independent. Missouri judge rejects Jay Ashcroft, Secretary of State's, quote, problematic summary of abortion initiative petition. Stephanie's been pouring through this decision. Do we have time to cover this here before we get into what's hot with Hannah, or do you want some time at 7:35?
I think we're going to have to break it down.
Okay.
It's going to take a bit of time.
We'll do that at 7:35. And also at 7:35, the Supreme Court, one of the big cases, they're back in session next week. One of the big cases they're covering has to do with the definition of words like but, if, and Stephanie's smiling. She's huge.
That's her bread and butter right
That's
there.
her bread and butter.
I love when I have to break out my big dictionary and we have to get into the definitions of words.
She's got that BDE.
Big dictionary energy.
Steph and her prepositions.
But, if, and. SCOTUS going to be working on defining those words next week. We're going to cover that at 7:35. Steph's going to break down this ruling yesterday from Circuit Judge John Beadham in Cole County. By the way, Mizzou game October 7th at home against LSU. If Mizzou wins this week, they'd still be ranked. LSU would likely be ranked. That game is sold out. Make sure you join us for our Tiger Tailgates. Here's what you do. Go to our websites, 939theeagle.com or kwos.com. Whole bunch of locations where you can get free passes. What we do 2 hours prior to the game, we party with Buffalo Wild Wings, Bud Light, and High Noon. You can pick up your passes in Columbia at G&D Pizzeria. In Jefferson City, you can go to Big O Tires. And in Mexico, you can go to Graff & Sons, Hy-Vee, Echo Water Systems, Twain Barbecue, and Tap Room. Also going to be joining us, biggest Tiger tailgate around. That's going to be prior to the LSU game. Sold out LSU game Saturday, October 7th. Coming up 5 minutes from now, we'll be doing What's Hot with Hannah.
Got a pretty stinky day for some Michigan police officers.
How much? Morning, it's 7:25-ish, which means it's...
I am glad to report that it is 7:25.
Me too, because I think I was going to get blamed yesterday.
After yesterday's debacle.
What happened there? Whose fault was that yesterday?
You claimed it was Scott Fawn's.
Oh, that's right, Scott Fawn.
Yeah.
But it was my first day back in a while, so you kind of also gave me a side eye.
There was plenty of blame to go around.
Plenty.
Plenty of get
But
blamed.
not today.
Not today. We're on it, man. What's up?
This is probably the nastiest search and rescue mission I have ever heard, and it made headlines for a very good reason last week.
So if you're currently eating breakfast...
Yeah, that's a good point. You might want to, set your bagel down for just a second. Brandon, you're going to hate this story, just a forewarning. We're going to Michigan, and the Michigan State Police last week earned their paychecks and then some when they responded to reports of a woman calling for help near a boat ramp at Dixon Lake in Michigan. And they get there, and they find that the calls for help are emanating from inside the outhouse near this boat ramp. And a woman was trapped inside the toilet in this outhouse. It was one of those that had an actual toilet, but it just, led to a giant hole in the ground, basically. Then you might ask yourself what caused this woman to get stuck in an outhouse. And she dropped something down the toilet.
So to speak.
Yes. She dropped her Apple Watch, which they're not cheap. They're a couple $100 on the low end. I don't know if it would cause me to climb into a toilet to try to retrieve it.
I was going to ask, what's the number? What's the value of something that you have to drop into an outhouse that you go, forget it, I'm good, man?
The number of things I flushed down the regular toilet, things that have fallen in the regular toilet, and I'm like, nope, not reaching in for that.
So they had to remove the toilet off of the, hole covering, and they used a strap to lift her out of the hole.
So they didn't get in with her. That's
No.
Here's a strap. You figure it out. When you're good, you give us a thumbs up. We'll use the crane. We'll yank you out.
I've posted the story on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, and there's some photos of the police officers kind of staring straight down into the hole. I don't understand how she got down there, honestly.
There are smarter ways to do this. Even my Apple Watch charger is kind of magnetic. You could have dangled it down. Recently I saw we were next to a canal and someone had dropped their phone in the water and everyone there was this huge crowd. I'm like, what's going on? And there was this man with a ladder who went down the side of a canal and he had a big stick with a magnet on it and everyone cheered. I mean, it was this big production and everyone cheered, but surely there's a better way to get an Apple Watch than to dunk yourself in a giant vat of poo.
Yeah, I think I probably would have just let the Apple Watch go and cut my losses. But this lady, I mean, she was determined to get it back, I guess.
So if you drop, and I don't know how much an Apple Watch is, couple $100
on the low end, yeah.
On the low end. So if you had $200 and you dropped it into an outhouse, do you go after the two George Washingtons? Do you go after the two Ben Franklins, John, or do you just nah, I'm good? You cut your losses and move on?
No. One of those decisions that always stinks, I guess, huh?
There you go. There it is, Mr. John Marsh. Welcome to the show. Glad you are here. Coming up a little bit later, Stephanie's looking at this decision
forward for the American people is to pass these appropriation bills, fund as many as we can this week, and give us 30 days breathing room so we can get the rest passed.
Kick the can down the road is another way of putting that. It's one of our local congressmen, Mark Alford, about an hour ago on Fox, on the Fox News Network this morning. As we continue, it looks like we're heading towards a government shutdown. And my opinion on that has not changed. Whatever. But the biggest, and I don't mean to sound so callous, but seriously, I think about, the adults that are in charge of things and what they're doing and not doing in D.C. And I get the sausage making process, but it's the soap opera manner in which it's handled. You have people like Matt Gaetz going and criticizing how Kevin McCarthy looks and things like that. Politicians shouldn't be doing that. Only radio talk show hosts should be criticizing the looks of lawmakers and people like that.
But, do your job.
Yeah.
Please.
This is important. Funding the government is an essential thing. You're getting, $200,000 a year? Come on.
And when they do finally get it figured out, they want to clap themselves on the back. It's no, that was your job. You're not going to get a gold star just because you did what was expected of you.
It's like when you're on time for What's Hot with Hannah at 7:25.
Yes.
We're going to look at me, man. Look at what I did. Welcome into the show. There is producer Hannah.
Hello.
And Mr. Marsh is here, too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Brian Houseworth is also here. My name is Branden Rathert. So let's stay on theme here. Let's talk about outhouses.
Yeah.
We continue to talk about. So What's Hot with Hannah? Interesting story. Woman in Michigan, Apple eye wash. And I'm wondering, Brad's got an interesting story we're going to share here in a minute about outhouses. And we've got some texts on this story, too. But this woman in Michigan, as I understand it, she's whatever, and her Apple Watch falls off, or I don't know what she was doing. But there had to be that moment in time, right? When you're looking into the pit.
You're asking questions.
Yeah.
You never look. That's the first rule of outhouses.
Don't look. And seriously, I don't mean to be too graphic. I know it's only 7:38 in the morning, but I'm just trying to be honest. In the occasions when you have to walk into an outhouse or a Johnny on the spot, do you walk with your shirt over your nose when you walk into the thing like this? Because it's one of the most unpleasant experiences in life. Am I the only one who does this, who walks in with your shirt over and maybe eyes closed?
Ugh.
Is another good option.
Eyes closed. Don't you think you need to see what you're doing?
Stephanie's rule number 1.
You just don't look down. You can look.
Don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact with.
And secure your devices beforehand.
So This woman, when the Apple iWatch drops into the thing, there had to be that moment where she's standing over it going,
now what?
Do I or don't I? And she did. And then guess what happened?
She got stuck.
And was there something with the Apple devices that showed there was an emergency, or did she have a phone, and did she have to take the phone out and call?
No, she was calling for help, help me, out loud. And somebody heard her, and they called 911. Said, hey, there's a lady yelling for help from the outhouse.
And the bystanders, you just hear this, help! And you're looking around.
So
you're out of luck, lady.
Yeah, she goes in after the Apple Watch, and this person sees a person down there and is like, I'm not coming in for you. I will call for help.
Well, in the photos that are posted on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, it's the footage from the officers, cameras that they wear. And the officers are looking straight down in the hole. So it's not like she got stuck in the toilet contraption. She made it all the way down there.
Before we get to Brad's phone call, check this out from Joe. It says, my mother-in-law dropped a bracelet and then flushed it down an airplane toilet. When they got to the airport, she actually asked them to drain the tank to get the bracelet back.
Oh.
They did it. She still has it.
Wow.
874-9390.
Stephanie has not encountered any of those airline staff members that would be that willing.
I don't think
to go above and beyond.
Brad is in Columbia. Brad, welcome into the show. What's your story, bud?
So years ago, I was going through the police academy, and also in the evenings or weekends, I was working a security job on construction sites at night. I had just bought a nice $200 flashlight, was working a construction job, as a security officer. I had to go to the bathroom, went and got in the Porta-John set the flashlight down on the toilet paper dispenser as to set the light, the mood, stood up, and it rolled off and went into the bottom. And at that time, I was very, very short on money and didn't know what to do. So I found a 55-gallon trash bag, put it around my arm, and reached down and grabbed it. And you could not see the light in the Porta-John, but when I pulled it out, it was still on.
It was illuminating the mess as it came out.
Brad,
right.
let me ask you, so when you realize that moment the flashlight's in there, how long did you stand over that, looking down? How long did you have to contemplate your next plan of action, and what was going through your head?
It was a good amount of time, and it was, do I really want to do this? Because that's kind of a new low, but this was the first time I had used that flashlight. But I still have it and still use it to this day.
All righty.
It got washed off and then bleached several times and sat for about a week and a half before it ever got put back into service.
Brad, we appreciate the phone call, man. I dig the fact you take time out of your day to be a part of Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Gary Nolan hosts the Gary Nolan Show weekdays 9 to noon here on the radio station. He did a story last week about some dude had a problem with his foot. The wife said, soak your toe for a while in some Epsom salt or whatever. He had some nasty rash and fungus. There was mushrooms growing off of his big toe. And so she comes home, and he's soaking his toe in the Epsom salt that he put into a crock pot.
Did he plug it in?
Oh, gross.
Cooked it on the low setting. But anyhow, Gary's question was, then do you ever use the crock pot again? And to what Brad just said, well, I wash it and set it out. I just, nope, I'll toss it. Or wrap it up and give it as a gift to somebody.
Well, and listener Doug texted us at 874-9390. We're actually getting a lot of texts. But he says, there's too many cracks and crevices in an Apple Watch. I don't think I'd ever put it on my arm again. I'd probably sell it without disclosure.
I don't like where this guy's head's at.
Oh, man. Oh, and by the way, there are several folks asking if she was successful in finding the Apple Watch. She was.
And it's like waterproof. Like it can withstand liquids.
And if she...
Okay.
Well, like, has anyone ever dropped like their phone in the toilet?
No.
I haven't, but
Not that we'd admit to.
Yeah, I haven't, but I feel like it's a semi-common thing to happen, and I think that's worse. Or not worse, but it's bad enough. I can't imagine dropping it into a vat of other people's stuff.
If you've ever done that, give us a call. 874-9390, 573 area code 874-9390. And now all of a sudden the question occurs to me too, like where was she wearing her Apple Watch that it fell into the toilet? And I would do the same if for some reason, if I ever dropped my cell phone into a toilet bowl, I would do exactly what this woman in Michigan did. I'd call 911. Even if it was just in a toilet, I'd call.
You'd yell for help and hope somebody heard and called 911?
Yeah. 874-9390. Is this a poor transition to go to the story from Circuit Judge, Cole County Circuit Judge?
I think there are a lot of people that are telling us they're eating their breakfast and they would like a cleaner story.
Oh, come on.
All right. Yesterday, Missouri judge rejected Secretary of State Shay Ashcroft's problematic summary of abortion initiative petitions.
He did so on 3 grounds, and so there's actually 6 versions that are challenged in this lawsuit. And 2 of the grounds, the judge said, first, there's you left something out that I think needs to be in there. That was one of the grounds. And so that ground is, hey, there's no reference to anything beyond abortion, and this initiative actually covers things like contraception. And so we need to let voters know that it's about more than just abortion. It's about, and I do not, reproductive health care. I don't like that term. That I think MSNBC came up with that term.
I get frustrated because when they say, and regardless of whatever your opinion is on abortion, but when they say reproductive health care, My opinion, reproductive is the exact opposite. When you're talking abortion, that is the exact opposite. And how on earth these people get away with it blows me away.
So I will say the term reproductive health care is actually used in the language of the initiative, so it's pulled straight from there. And when the court rewrote it, they said reproductive health care, comma, including abortion and contraceptives. So they do actually use the word abortion when rewriting it. But I will say, so they said, hey, you've got to refer to contraceptives too. Then the court said, hey, you also included this stuff about require the government not to discriminate. And actually, like, that's an ancillary provision, and you've only got 100 words here, and we really think there's more important stuff in there, and you need to leave that out. So those were two of the grounds. But then the main ground, which I found really fascinating, was they said, hey, there's all these, let's see, the court finds that certain phrases included in the summary statement are problematic in that they are either argumentative or do not fairly describe the purposes or probable effect of the initiative. Some of it, I think I agree. So the phrase dangerous, unregulated, and unrestricted abortions, that's, not, that could be considered, I think, at least biased. But partial birth abortion is included in the problematic phrase list. Isn't that like an accepted term? Isn't that a defined, like, we know what partial birth abortion is. The word unborn child is labeled as a problematic phrase. So there are some things on this list that I'm like, I think we know what that is, and how is that any more problematic than the term reproductive health care?
Yeah. And it's also problematic when you get these progressives saying, well, there's no Democrat that wants to do abortion up until a full term. That's BS. We have Bernie Sanders on record. We have New York Mayor Eric Adams on record. We have John Fetterman on record all saying, yeah, up until birth, I'm okay with it. Kathy Tran, delegate from the state of Virginia.
Where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth. She has physical signs that she is about to give a birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified?
My bill would allow that, yes.
Yeah, so don't let these people lie to you. There's no Democrats that want to do that. Yes, there are.
There really are, but I don't think this, I still, even given the court's rewrite, I find it hard to believe that Missourians are going to buy this, because so the court rewrote the ballot title, and in every ballot title, the second bullet, you're going to read, when you go in to vote, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to remove Missouri's ban on abortion? And I think while there are a lot of people out there who might support exceptions in certain circumstances, I don't think there's a majority of people who are going to vote to amend the Constitution to remove Missouri's ban on abortion. Missouri voters aren't there.
I think the whole basis for this goes back to all the debate we've seen over the past legislative session and in the courts over initiative petition reform. And so much of the debate on that circled around unclear ballot language on constitutional amendments.
Yeah, it's not the first time you speak about unclear language, not the first time that has been an issue. Bottom line, things will still be voting on. Language will look a little different.
Well, this is a circuit court opinion, so it is headed to the Court of Appeals. So we'll see if we keep this language or not. But yeah, it's likely, I would think, that the language is not exactly as the Secretary originally wrote it.
Coming up 5 minutes from now, that would be all except for
concerns over the possible government shutdown at the end of the month, but the three major indices finishing with gains. The Dow ends the session up 43 points, NASDAQ gaining 60, while the S&P finishes up 17.
Stephanie going to be monitoring futures for you coming up at 8:25, the Morning Bell. Business news with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can bring you.
And whether you want to date robots or date real people, we've got a lot of tech updates this week.
And that would be all, except for this.
Okay, kids, which is it? Voodoo lawyer or chronic sheep?
Voodoo lawyer.
Lawyer.
Going with a lawyer. Steph votes lawyer. Here we go. An Italian lawyer who used voodoo to attempt to kill a client has been convicted, even though there is no proof in the courtroom that voodoo magic can actually kill a person or a client who doesn't want to pay. Barbara Raimondo was sentenced to 18 years on probation for using voodoo and a witch to perform black magic against an elderly family friend. The prosecutor said Raimondo stood to inherit her house when the friend died. The Italian Penal Code allows for conviction of, quote,
That's a real thing, Hannah.
Impossible crimes. This would be the penal code. But Raimondo's lawyer will appeal the decision and says, my client believes in sorceresses, but we believe in the appeal that the accusation will be dismissed. She was found guilty of embezzlement. Now you know the rest of the Italian Penal Code.
Penal.
I just wasn't expecting that word to come up in that story.
So to speak.
Yeah.
I defer to the counselor among us.
You guys, come on, man. Our state treasurer, Vivek Malek, is going to be here on the show talking about unclaimed property. I'd hate to have a sitting statewide official on the show. We're talking about outhouses and...
I think there's like a ton of no-nos in that story. You can't kill your clients, and you can't convince your old clients to give you all their stuff.
So what's in the penal code? What is it?
It's like anything to deal with crimes, like punishments. Like that's what the penal code is.
As in penalties.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that does make sense. Okay.
Well, and it's a fair question because next week the Supreme Court, they're taking up a case, and it's regarding the definition of words because you get into legalese, words in that case matter. The words they're going to be considering the definitions of? But. If. Two-letter word. If. And this is a case coming before the Supreme Court next week. So that's one of the stories we're going to be covering this morning. Vivek Malek is here. And what's interesting about our visit with Mr. Malek, state treasurer, so they do, an unclaimed property auction. Whenever they have stuff for too long, they're like, hey, let's do an auction. This one's happening in Cape Girardeau. But some of the weird things, and I think one of the weirdest things we've ever covered over the years, this was with former state treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick. It was a Pez dispenser. And then we've asked before, too, well, what about things that, like, y'all just don't even sell? Like, oh, we didn't know that was in the safe deposit box. Let's get rid of that. So he's going to be joining us a little bit after 8 o'clock here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Tomorrow night, it is the debate. We're going to have live coverage, 8 o'clock. So if you can't get to a TV, man, the radio station here is an option. And the other cool thing, even if you have a TV, why not tune into the radio anyway? I love... Whenever there's debates, I love to listen. I don't know. It's just a different feel to it. You might try that. Tomorrow we're going to be careful.
Now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Since President Biden will be making this trip, does this mean he supports the 40% pay increase, the 32-hour work week?
I'm not going to get into the details of what's being negotiated right now on the table with certainly with the parties.
I want to press you a little bit on what you just said. You said that the president supports the auto workers. Does that mean that the president is siding with the auto workers over the auto companies?
What we're saying is we're not going to get into the negotiation, right? This is, when it comes to the negotiation, that is something for the parties to decide on. That is something for them to discuss.
Yeah, but producer Hannah's tax dollars are filling up Air Force One, and the president's going out there. It's twice Karine Jean-Pierre in the White House was asked, so Joe Biden's going to go on the picket line with these folks. Does that mean he supports the idea that they want like a 40% increase in pay and a 20% reduction in hours? Does that mean that he supports it? And so Hannah is paying for Air Force One for the president to go and politic up there, and Stephanie's going to pay for it too. And I got $1 in my wallet this morning. Here, Joe, here's some of my taxpayer dollars. Go and do this. She was asked, and we have the audio, which we won't bore you with here. She was asked 4 additional times. Like, okay, just a real simple question, Corinne. We're not trying to make a point. We're not trying to attack you. We just want to be clear. The president of the United States is going in Michigan. He's going to stand on the line. Can you answer that question? Does he support? Well, no, he doesn't support it. And par for the course for the White House. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We are glad you could be here. Something really cool happening this week here in the state of Missouri. You know, we're really big on unclaimed property. One of our local state reps, Cherie Tolson-Reich, former treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick, had always been really good in letting the public know if you have unclaimed property in the state of Missouri, there's a website you can go to, and you might have some stuff out there. We have found over the years, we found for several members here on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri family. My dad has had money out there more than once. I think I had $4.36. But it is interesting. You get on, real easy to do. If you get onto the website, you can find it. And then whenever nobody claims that stuff, whenever it sits there for a while, Treasurer says, all right, we're going to do an auction. We have one of those coming up this week. Want to bring into the show State Treasurer Vivek Malek joining us on the show now. Welcome into the show, Mr. Malek. So how does this work? When do you guys decide, like, okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do an auction and get rid of this stuff? How do you guys determine that?
Well, first of all, Branden, good morning. Very good morning to you, and a good morning to all our listeners at Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So today is an exciting day for us at the State Treasurer's Office, and especially the Unclaimed Division, as we open up our unclaimed property auction in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, Southeast Missouri. So that will be a preview today at 5 p.m. at the Drury Plaza Hotel Conference Center, and the actual auction will be starting 9 a.m. tomorrow morning through 5 p.m. the 28th Thursday. And we have 21 lots on display today and for auction the next 2 days.
And then how does that work? What's the time frame? You say, okay, here's stuff we're going to auction off. Like, does it have to sit in a safe deposit box for a while, going unclaimed? What's the determination?
So what happens is we receive about 1,000 safety deposit boxes every year. We have to keep them, keep the contents for about 5 years, actively looking for the owners to claim that stuff. And if we cannot find the owners, then we have to take the contents to an auction. And once the properties are auctioned off, we keep the proceeds into that account forever till that money is claimed by the actual owner.
All right, so it's got to sit there for a while, and if nobody claims it, then you say we're selling it. And Stephanie's been perusing the list here. She's uncovered some really interesting things on the list here. Does it get to a point sometimes you say, okay, it's been sitting here for a while, we need to put it to auction, or are you just like, let's just toss this? It's a broken gold chain. Let's just toss it. How do you guys figure that one out?
Yes, we have a dedicated staff that sifts through all the stuff that comes through the safe deposit boxes, and then they appropriately inventorize it, and that inventory then goes in which will go on an auction and which will not. We will have an actuary who actually comes in and tells the value, and we put a reserve price on that, which will be going in for auction. So we have dedicated interested parties which come from all across the state and out of the state, from New York, California. They always are waiting for this auction to happen, and they make about half of the people who come to the auction who are looking for gold, silver items, coins, collectors, and stuff like that.
Treasurer Malek, we always appreciate you joining us, and thank you for your service. I know that according to your website, you've referenced as 1 in 10, so that's a high number of Missourians has unclaimed property. The average return's $300. That's quite a bit of money, obviously, in tight times. What do you encourage people to do on your website? It's pretty basic, but what do you encourage them to do? And if they see their name in any amount, whether it's $1 or $300 or $1 million, what do they then do?
So the first thing is they need to log on to showmemoney.com on their smartphones, on their iPads or desktops, laptops, and search for their name, last name, their friend's name, their family members' names, and see if there's any unclaimed property that is belonging to them, whether it is cash money or any collectibles from somewhere. And if they do have that, then they proceed to add all that into a basket, and the next step would be to verify the information that the person who is claiming that is the person. Once we verify that, then we are able to send the check or that property to them. This is a pretty simple process. It's showmemoney.com, and we have returned quite a bit of money back to Missourians in the first 6 months in my office, and I'm very proud of that.
All right, State Treasurer Vivek Malek joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, talking about this auction for unclaimed property taking place tomorrow.
I think, Vivek, we talked to one of your staff a year or two ago, and I thought one of the interesting things he brought up was they went through a safety deposit box that had a change of clothes, a ski mask, and a gun. So what are some of the more interesting items that have shown up?
Yeah, so last time we were on displaying, I found an 18th century curling iron. That was interesting, how they would put that in the fire and how they would use that to curl. Women would use to curl their hair. And we have had a soldier's journal, handwritten journal, in perfect condition, almost perfect condition from the Civil War. This year, in the auction, we will have a rare 1913 journal of someone's pilgrimage to Rome. So those are some of the very interesting things that you would find in the auction.
All right, Mr. Malek, State Treasurer, State of Missouri. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we let you go?
So as a tribute to our own Bob Barker, I would say, come on down to Cape Girardeau. Come on down to Cape Girardeau and see what we have in the auction. You would be interested and you would be intrigued what we have there. We have a lot of collectible antiques, jewelry, and many interesting lots of property. We have collector coins. There's a 5-piece Great Depression coin set from 1929, a $1 gold coin from 1853. There's jewelry. There's an 18-karat white gold ring and bracelets. And all that information you can actually look up at our website, treasure.mo.gov/auction, and you can download the booklet. I would say this is a time when you can possibly get some good deals and bargains. So come on down.
All right, State Treasurer Vivek Malek, thank you for your time here on the show this morning. An 18th century curling iron. There's something new I learned this morning. I had no idea that curling irons had been around since the 1800s.
Of course they had.
It's always interesting, and the amount of stuff that they find is interesting. But I do encourage, Branden, for everybody to check, and I check it about a couple times a month. I'm pretty good to make sure any bank accounts. I've never found anything for myself, but I can tell you this is brand new. My mom and dad moved into a retirement community, and Dad has, it's not a lot, but two accounts that just would have popped up in the last, and I don't know what happened there, but in the last maybe 2-3 weeks. So I'll let him know that today. But it's very easy to do, and I encourage people to look because that is your money.
And what a constituent services thing, too. I remember when Representative Rice showed up to our Ashland Board of Aldermen meeting, she had searched all of us up and said, hey, you all need to get on here and check this out because some of your names are on this list. So I think if you're elected, too, it's nice for you to keep an eye out for not only your family members, but your constituents. I appreciated that. The things that are on my list from the auction, the Slick Times Bill Clinton novelty $3 bill. I want one of those. The OtterBox for the iPhone 4. Hannah, is an iPhone 4 anything more than a paperweight at this point?
No, that's even older than the phone that Rathert just traded in.
What iPhone model are we on now?
15.
15.
Titanium.
The unopened Gillette razor with a Kansas City Chiefs logo. Like, you could put that in someone's stocking for Christmas, but honestly, there's a lot
Taylor
of...
Swift is going to be bidding on that one.
There's some really cool baseball cards and some other coins and like some really interesting stuff, but there's also some stuff that I'm thinking, why were you holding on to that?
USA Today, here's how big this Kansas City, Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs, Taylor Swift thing is. USA Today put out a guide, a Swifties guide to Travis Kelce. What to know about the Kansas City Chiefs tight end. So that's how big, and I get it. A lot of us probably hanging out this morning, we don't care about Taylor Swift, don't care who Travis Kelce is dating. What I want to know.
Speak for yourself.
Yes.
Can he catch the ball on Sunday afternoons whenever Patrick throws it to him? But now to give you an idea in the zeitgeist, how big of a deal, how much attention is being paid to our Chiefs in the Show Me State, they've put out a guide.
It's one of the top stories on the Wall Street Journal about Taylor Swift craziness. My favorite, though, lately is wives have been pulling the pranks on their husband, and they've been videoing, and they're like, isn't it great how Taylor Swift put Travis Kelce on the map? I mean, no one knew who he was before this. And the look on their face, they're like, you mean like one of the best players in the NFL? He went to the Super Bowl last year. And they're like, isn't it great what she's doing for his career? And the husbands just lose their mind.
There has been a 400% increase in Travis Kelce jerseys being sold since Sunday's game.
Wow. How about that? And so, see, it's good for the economy. That's why this story matters. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift dating, it matters. By the way, I wanted to give some kudos. I can't believe you didn't say anything, Houseworth. You were on Houseworth. So Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, hosts a TV show this week in Missouri politics. Really good show. It's on Sunday statewide. You can watch it. Stephanie Bell's been featured on there a couple of times, but it's Scott Faughn. He gets a panel of people from the political world, just all kinds. And you were on there, and I didn't find out until this morning that you were on there this weekend. What were you on there for?
I was on, it was Representative Dave Griffith of Jefferson City, Representative Kathy Steinhoff, a Democrat from Columbia, Hannah Beers, and myself. In a lot of different topics, but we talked about I talked about Kent Hayden. I really focused on the hospital closures we've seen in Callaway and Audrain County. Talked about some other things as well, Stephen Weber's race in Moon Choi and what they're trying to do with Next Gen. But it was a good show.
So you get on to the Missouri Times, Scott Faughn's website, and you'll be able to watch Brian Houseworth on there. Coming up 5 minutes from now, Morning Bell Business News with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
I know you recently took ChatGPT off of your roster.
I met a human.
Wow.
But you might need to put it back on. And if ChatGPT isn't for you, then you're going to have to pay some significant moolah
Time for the Morning Bell business news with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
Futures are down this morning. All of our three indexes we watch are down more than 0.5%. The market is going to open shortly, but in the red yesterday, back in the red today. Branden, you were very involved there for a bit with ChatGPT.
I was committed.
And you were having lots of conversations with the robot, and I was getting nervous about the level of commitment that you had devoted in time.
I'd get on the ChatGPT every day and just start asking the questions. Really cool. A great time killer, by the way. But then that started about November when you first turned us on to this right here on the show, and then the conversations became more and more consistent, and they happened with more frequency. And before I knew it, I was in deep.
You were, but now you've transitioned to someone else on your roster besides ChatGPT. But maybe you're going to go back because ChatGPT has released a new version this week. You're going to be able to join ChatGPT Plus. You're going to have to pay for it. So no more free.
I've never paid for it. I'm not
well,
doing that.
$20 a month. And ChatGPT is going to be more like Alexa or Siri, where it will be able to respond audibly. So it's not just, it won't just type the answers out, it will talk back to you. So you can actually have a conversation with.
You mean like one of the other women on my roster, Alexa? See,
Yep.
Alexa, by the way, there's no roster. We kid around. There's no roster. But, so it'll.
Well, there's not one anymore.
She is getting to be more advanced. So you might have to, put her back on your roster. Anyway,
How much is she going to charge me?
$20 a month. But also, so if you're into the dating world, it's getting more expensive, and we're going to get there. But one thing for people who are not friendly with the robots, this thing, the new ChatGPT Plus, a reason why you might want to pay the $20, apparently it now responds to images. So for example, the example it gives is you could open up your fridge, take a picture of the inside of your fridge, and then ask it, what can I make with this stuff? And it will spit out a recipe. Now, that might be worth $20, honestly. So it will, beyond just being able to talk back to you, it can respond to photos, which I kind of like. The other thing that is increasing in price is if you're on the dating apps. I don't know if I like this or not. Tinder is now offering a premium service. It is $499 per month to be matched with the most sought-after profiles. So
Is this like the equivalent of paying for a boosted post on Facebook? Like, it just puts your profile in front of more people?
You're in this club, and you get like a badge, kind of like a verified badge, that you're in this club. And in some instances, they said it's like, oh, these are, they're trying to politely say. So at first they were like, these are the power users. Well, isn't Tinder like the hookup app? So do you want to be matched with the people who are the power users of Tinder? That sounds like a unsafe place to be. So they've rebranded it a little bit, and they're like, no, these are just like the famous hot people or whatever, not necessarily the people who use the app the most.
Come a long way from inflatable girlfriends, Rathert.
$499 a month, but apparently they're not the only ones. The League, a competitor, charges $1,000 a week. Can you imagine?
That's crazy.
What's a girlfriend worth to you, Branden?
Coming up.
Tinder is free. That's crazy.
In high school, he was an honors student, and I got kicked off the team because I failed French. And English too, but French sounds way better. And then when we were in college, I actually got kicked off the team because I tested positive for marijuana. So it just goes to show you, if you smoke weed and you're bad at school, you can win the Super Bowl twice.
The opinions expressed by Travis Kelce on his visit to Saturday Night Live earlier this year. Not necessarily the opinions of the members here of Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's John Marsh.
Good morning.
Producer Hannah is here.
Hello.
There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
I'm Branden Rathert. I want to bring this up again real quick. Listen, Taylor Swift, whatever, Travis Kelce, one of the greatest tight ends in the game of football. This thing with him and Taylor, like it's in the zeitgeist, and everybody's talking about it. You've got the biggest star in the world. I mean, more name recognition than probably anybody in Taylor Swift. We know what her concert tour did for the economy, seriously, even here in Missouri. So her and Travis, and I don't even know for sure that anybody knows that they're dating.
They're not. See, people have been going, oh my gosh, it's confirmed. It's confirmed.
That's right.
No, she came to a football game.
So they can be friends and hang out. Just because you're of the opposite gender, you can hang out. Doesn't mean you're dating. You can be very good friends.
They did leave together. They were seen driving away in his car, but,
And he rented
into that, whatever you want, right?
And he rented the rooftop of like a popular bar, and apparently they canoodled or something.
Listen, I want it to be true. I do. I just, until it's confirmed as true, I'm not believing anything.
Hannah's not believing it till there's babies involved.
Yeah, their babies would be beautiful and talented.
And tall.
Such a big deal. USA Today has put out a Swifties guide to Travis Kelce, and I'm only going to spend a minute on this because we're working on more important things like what is the definition of the word but and the definition of the word if and things like that. And it's important stuff. So much so, Supreme Court considering these words coming up next week. But what's fascinating in this guide from USA Today about Travis Kelce, I'm reminded of how fortunate we are to have this guy playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, John. He's won, obviously, a couple of Super Bowls, 71 career touchdowns for a tight end. Pretty impressive.
Arguably one of the best tight ends in the league.
Yeah. 825 receptions. He holds multiple NFL records, including the most seasons with 1,000-plus receiving yards by a tight end, receiving yards in a season by a tight end at over 1,400. Do we need to mention that happened in a 17-game season prior to when everybody was just getting these records in 16 games? Is that important to add?
No.
Okay.
He's also one of the few players in the NFL who says, yeah, I'm underpaid, and yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I have fun, man. I'm helping out the rest of the team here. And then I forgot all about this because I remember we had fun with his back in 2016. He was on a TV show on NBC called Catching Kelce.
Yes.
He chose from 50 different women in 50 different states. It was a setup kind of like The Bachelor, but as he said on Saturday Night Live, he says one of the big differences was people watched The Bachelor. Nobody watched my show. So I just thought it was kind of interesting, some of the things. Reminded of how great Travis Kelce.
Did you see Bill Belichick, the Pats coach, even had a cute line about it?
What did he say?
He said Travis Kelce's had a lot of big catches in his career, but this would be the biggest.
Welcome to the show. Supreme Court next week considering a case. And this is, like, if I were to ask you, and unless you're super smart, like, seriously, can you define the word if? I don't think I could do it. Can you define the word and? Hannah, can you define the word or? O-R? Can you define that word?
Give me just a second.
Right? Exactly. I'm like, I know how to use it in a sentence. I know how to spell it. I don't know the definition of the word or.
It's used to link alternatives.
Good answer, Hannah. Do you know how to define the word if? Like, how would you define that word? It's part of a case Supreme Court of the United States going to be hearing next week.
And really what's at issue is the word and. And so the court is actually looking at this. It's kind of deals with sentencing, and it gives judges discretion and says, okay, basically, if you've got three of these things, if your crime or whatever falls within these three categories, they can offer you some type of discretion. And the judges, and it's written in the negative, so it makes it even more difficult. And so the courts are looking at this and saying, okay, is this a you just have to meet one of them? Or do I have to find out that it's all three? Is it an and? So if it's an or, if it's, hey, if Branden, it was under $100, or it was, without a gun, or it was whatever. Is it just one of them, or do they have to check all three boxes? Is it or an and? And the whole law, and so they said that a lot of judges have been interpreting it, I believe, with an and, but it was written to give judges more discretion, and so the intent was, I think, that you only needed to qualify under one, but that's not how it was written, and people are confused about whether it means or and. And this actually comes up a lot. And so, you would hope that, and there's all sorts of statutory construction. It's like, okay, the legislature, it never enacts a meaningless provision. Each word is written on purpose. They know how to write these. Now, and then we watch it right here in mid-Missouri. We watch them cram together crazy bills in the last week, and they're working furiously. And then we spend hours and hours and hours later parsing these words, saying, they meant every single word. When they said and, they meant and. They didn't make any mistakes. They didn't accidentally say or when they meant and.
I remember when we talked to State Rep Rudy Veed, a longtime mid-Missouri attorney, on some of the issues at the Capitol that had to go back to the drawing board and be rewritten because of buts and ands and all that.
These things happen, but it does matter. I mean, think about if you're an individual who would qualify under a single provision for a lower sentence, and then you go to the and the bill was written that way. You go to the judge, and the judge is like, well, you didn't qualify for all three, so you don't go to a lower sentence. And what they're saying is there's like 6,000 people that are, in the system that could be affected by the way this law is interpreted, and perhaps, I think, get have their sentence lightened. So it does matter. And I would say, we were talking about the abortion initiative earlier, and talk about parsing words. You only get 100 words. So when we're talking about how you write the ballot language to go on a ballot, that often comes down to a single word here or there, an argument over a single word. And, words matter. And I was going back when there was a big fight between, if you recall, Secretary of State Ashcroft and Treasurer Fitzpatrick. Was it? The treasurer at the time, and they had written the ballot language. The legislature had written ballot language about the treasurer's duties and about the IP that we voted on before. The entire lawsuit was about a single word in the ballot measure. It was the word override. There was the first bullet, and it said, do you want to amend the Constitution to allow the General Assembly to override the current constitutional restrictions of state investments? And the whole lawsuit was about a single word. And you think about it, I mean, it's funny to talk about ands and buts and those kind of things, but oftentimes you kind of get them in strings, right? So you might see an adjective and then three other things. So maybe you see blue car, truck, and van. And the question is blue, is it a blue car? And then does blue modify truck and van, or is it any color truck or van? What is that does that first word matter? And so
Hannah, how are you following this?
I mean, it gets really detailed, but these things matter. And and oftentimes lawsuits, especially ones in Mid-Mo, in Cole County, come down to, how statutes are interpreted, what the dictionary definition is. I had a lawsuit, and it involved open records law. And the question was, it used the term unincorporated association in part of the statute, and later it used just the word association. And the argument was, well, clearly it means unincorporated association because it used that before. But then there's also an argument that, well, if they meant unincorporated association, they used it up here. So when they didn't use it down here, maybe they meant something different. So Branden's laughing, and he's looking at me like, your job is so
You're exactly
hilarious.
Right. And hard.
But think about if you're these people sitting in prison, and you're like,
and that's why it matters.
And it matters to you, yeah. And in a lot of these big time lawsuits, it matters. And then think about with your ballot measure, if you're using the terms reproductive health care, or you're using the term abortion, and people are walking it, words matter. How people vote on those initiatives sometimes, at least people think that it comes down to what words are on the page.
And here's my limited experience with that. Pensacola 2016 went to a strong form mayor, new city charter and everything. The first mayor, Ashton Hayward, who reminded me a lot of Gavin Newsom. He was a slick-talking, good-looking dude. And anyhow, city council, he wouldn't go to the city council meetings. And he would say, well, look at the language of the charter. Well, the folks who are criticizing him for not going to the meetings, they were saying, well, look at the language of the charter. The one word that got everybody hung up is coming up 5 minutes from now. Here on Wake Up.
I need a couple minutes to try to digest what Stephanie just told us.
We will do some leftovers coming up 5 minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Good morning. Out.
Enjoy.
We're talking about words, case before SCOTUS next week regarding the definitions of the words if and but. And it matters because it has to do with drug sentencings and different qualifiers and disqualifiers. My experience with that when it relates to the definition of a word, Pensacola went to change the city charter, strong form of mayor, and the mayor wasn't going to meetings. And you had folks saying, well, the mayor needs to be at meetings. And they said, look at the city charter, and it explains it. And the mayor, Ashton Hayward, said, I don't have to be at meetings. Look at the charter. It says it. And the big hang-up, the word in the charter that was the big hang-up was the word may, M-A-Y. The mayor may attend city council meetings. Mayor said, see, it says may. It doesn't say I have to. And then the folks that thought he should be there said, well, we need to change that to shall. The mayor should do it. Interesting take. Words matter. What you got for leftover, Steph?
Well, I think we do need to remind people, we had the treasurer on earlier, the auction for unclaimed property opens. I think you can look at it today, but it opens tomorrow. There's some really good stuff on there. But you can also check your name on the web and claim your cash. But if you're looking for coins or baseball cards or old jewelry, there's some neat stuff in there.
I have this for leftovers. Kind of as we're talking about words matter. Washington Commanders football team being sued by a group called NAGA, N-A-G-A. I'd never heard of this, Native American Guardians Association. Here's why they are suing the Washington Commanders. You know, for years and years and years, they had the whole thing about the Redskins' names. They finally changed it. For a while, it was just the Washington football team, and now it's the Washington Commanders. The Native American Guardians Association is accusing the NFL franchise of defamation, civil conspiracy, and civil rights violations for their role in suppressing Native American history. They want to reclaim its traditional Redskins identity, and they don't like the name Commanders because they're saying that is a name fitting for oppressors. So in other words, they're saying the name Redskins carries deep cultural, historical, and emotional significance, honoring the bravery, resilience, and warrior spirit associated with the American culture. So this Native American Guardians Association, they're saying, hey, we like the name, and actually Commanders is oppressive, and please take our name back.
While we're on the topic of words, I was trying to do the research on this too, and I think this came down to it. Remember that big Josh Hawley lawsuit about where he lived? I think that came down to the definition of reside.
Ashland, Jefferson City.
Yeah, and it was the AG must reside in Jefferson City, and it was like, okay, what does it mean to reside in Jefferson City? And I think past AGs, like I think Koster had like an apartment there, and it's like, okay, what is, yeah, and so it's more common. I know it was giving you guys a headache, but it's actually a lot more common than you think, that something will come down to a single word or phrase.
And the thing I recall about that is people pointed out when that was in the Constitution, wherever that was written into law, like that was back in the 1800s when, yeah, you had to live in Jefferson City, but now with a high-tech commutable world, I think one of the arguments was, hey, it's outdated. Mm-hmm. It's still in there, though. Mm-hmm. And I do recall that. Marsh, what do you got for leftovers?
Well, on the football vein, how about the Steelers got flying home from Vegas, had to make an emergency landing in Kansas City last night. And they posted everybody on the plane was okay, but wow, kind of spooky.
Everybody was in Missouri over the Taylor Swift. Everybody was there.
Something else that's coming up sports related. I saw this. If you buy or sell tickets on Ticketmaster, remember how Biden changed that rule about the $600 and maybe you need to report it to the IRS? And they were thinking like, Etsy sellers, but they're saying no. If you had tickets that then you resold on Ticketmaster and you were making money, a single transaction over $600 could require Ticketmaster to then send you the tax form that then you would then have to report that to the IRS. I hadn't quite contemplated that, but I could see, like, you're just a casual person who maybe had tickets and you're thinking, I can't use these, I'm going to sell them on Ticketmaster. Now you're tied up in Biden's IRS BS.
I just want to sell these Taylor Swift concert tickets. I don't want to get the IRS involved. They were my tickets. I paid my money for them, and now John Marsh wants to buy them at double the price. I'm just going to sell them to John. They're my tickets, my money. I can do what I want. I don't need the government getting involved in my business.
Well, guess what? You might be getting a letter from Ticketmaster that tells you you need to get in touch with the IRS.
It's like in Columbia. And I know it's happening in cities nationwide. I know there's a big thing in Las Vegas recently. It's happening in Kansas City. But these government entities are saying, your home that you own and that you pay for and everything, you want to rent that out, you want to make money in your home, well, we want to regulate it. And by the way, not only do we want to regulate it, but we want to make some money off it. We want a bed tax. I always get frustrated on that. That's one of the ways that Gary Nolan and I are alike. Like, leave me alone. My money, my house, my stuff. And if I'm not messing, if I'm not impeding upon other people's ability to be happy and live their lives as they want, then leave me alone. Anybody else got anything? Oh, tomorrow night, again, the debate. We are carrying that right here on the radio station, 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
We might even have to pick this up. Have you seen this story about Lego? I'd have to pick this up tomorrow. Apparently, they announced this huge initiative. They were going to, because it's plastic, right? And they're going to go to clean, whatever, and try to refabricate their Lego and all this. And then they've been doing all these studies. And basically, they said, yeah, trying to use all these green things and go, that is actually worse for the environment. And so they basically said, we're going back to the original. And I thought, that's amazing. And I mean, the power of their company and the growth of their company, they've got the best people. And if they're saying this, maybe other companies will be like, you know what? Yeah, we don't need to just join in this woke thing and say we're going green. Let's look at what the science actually says and what the data actually says. And if it says it's actually worse for the environment to, do batteries or build windmills or whatever it is, then we're not going to do it.
Ford Motor Company shocked a lot of folks yesterday, saying we're going to halt operations at this new partially Chinese-owned factory where we're doing electric vehicle batteries.